Hey Lake Point, Pastor Mikey here to get you caught up on the fifth week of our series, All In. It's not just a series, but a defining moment in the life and history of our church. Throughout All In, we're journeying through the book of Nehemiah. And this week, Pastor Nate explored how a vision doesn't become a reality until somebody is willing to embrace risk and sacrifice. You see, launching a vision always involves committing wholeheartedly to what could and should be true. Goliath never would have been defeated had David not stepped out from the ranks of the Israelites to challenge the giant. The Apostle Paul never would have known the joy of bringing the gospel to unreached people groups had he not packed his bag that first time and headed off into the unknown. There's always risk. There's always sacrifice. Now, last week we left off in the story of Nehemiah with the people of Jerusalem gathering around him to listen intently to his vision. He told them about how the gracious hand of God had been upon him, recounting his conversation with the king. Only God could have inspired the king to show such favor to Nehemiah, and this miracle inspired them to trust God. Look at how they responded in Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 18. They replied at once, "Yes, let's rebuild the wall." And so they began the good work. In other words, they committed to the task. They embraced the vision. Now, the way the story is depicted makes it sound as if the people in Jerusalem really didn't have anything better to do than rebuild the wall. You almost get the feeling that they were standing around with their hands in their pockets until Nehemiah came along. But that was not the reality at all. There was this was an agricultural society. If you weren't working, you weren't eating. Adding this project to their daily routine meant putting other things on hold. Rebuilding the wall, embracing this vision meant sacrifice and risk. To complicate things even further, most of the people had moved out of the city at this time in the areas surrounding Jerusalem. Rebuilding the wall meant traveling into town to work. It meant putting life as they had come to know it on hold. It meant leaving their farms, their cattle, and their families unattended. Eventually, they were asked to leave their homes altogether and move into the city to make the work more efficient. And if that situation was not risky enough, there was an additional complication to the work of rebuilding the city. Not everybody was excited about the prospect of Israel getting back on its feet. Some of the local non-Jewish officials were very displeased with the rebuilding effort because they knew it would change the balance of political power in favor of the Jews. Sanballat was the main leader of opposition to Nehemiah's vision. He was the governor of Samaria, about 20 kilometers northwest of Jerusalem. He, along with the governors of the other surrounding regions, had benefited financially as well as politically from Israel's weakened state. The last thing they wanted was Israel to flex their muscles and regain the clout they once carried in that region of the world. So, Sanballat and his allies began questioning Nehemiah's motives and his intentions. They began circulating threatening rumors and letters amongst the people. Their goal was to ensure that the wall would never be completed. Consequently, the men and women who were leaving their homes and farms to travel to Jerusalem to work on the wall did so at the risk of returning home to find their houses burned and their crops destroyed. Everything dear to them was at stake. Yet, despite both personal sacrifice and risk, the people committed themselves to completing the task. And when they did, something unexpected happened. When the inhabitants of Jerusalem rolled up their sleeves and went to work on this wall, God went to work on their hearts. This disorganized, unmotivated, naturally uninspired remnant became a team. The moment they put their hands to the task, they were transformed from a scattered, self-serving flock into an army with a mission. As Nate said it, their physical sacrifice led to their spiritual renewal. The reason why physical sacrifice often results in spiritual renewal goes back to a principle Jesus taught in the Sermon on the Mount. In Matthew chapter 6, verse 21, Jesus is recorded as saying, "Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will also be." Nehemiah knew that if the people committed their financial resources to God's kingdom, their hearts would eventually follow. Because when you sacrifice monetarily for the sake of a God-ordained vision, it's like handing your Heavenly Father the keys to your heart. It loosens the grip that this world has on you and opens you up to a whole new way of living. Well, friends, thanks for listening. Enjoy jumping into discussion questions. Let's go all in.